Previously, we learned about what CSS is and how cascading style sheets work, and the fact that they are focused on the look and feel of web pages. And what we're going to do today in this video is we are going to focus on the first type of styling that we can do in an HTML document. And the first type of styling is the first that came along when CSS was first introduced to HTML. And that is going to be an inline style. So we're going to go ahead and focus on adding an inline style to our HTML document. Now, I'm going to give a disclaimer here. Inline styles nowadays are probably the worst method you can use to add styles to your HTML. And that is because of something called separation of concerns. When we add inline styles to an HTML document, we are putting the styling of, or the look and feel of that document inside of the document. Which means that later on, if we have a website that has a whole lot of HTML pages, when we want to change the look and feel of an H1 tag, we're going to have to go change that style across all of the HTML pages we have. And if we have hundreds of pages, that simple update, or what should be a simple update of just how that H1 is styled, we're going to have to change that, and we're going to have to repeat that code and copy and paste that code across hundreds of pages. In other words, it's probably the least effective way to add styling to your HTML documents that you could possibly use. But we're going to learn about it so that you know about it, so that as you're doing web development, if you run into bugs in the browser where when you change CSS in an external style sheet, which we'll learn about later, and that style still doesn't change, you'll know to actually go look at the elements and see if maybe somebody chose to do an inline style and that's what's causing your problems. So I'm opening up the demo site that we've been building as we've been going through these tutorials. I'm on the index page. I'm going to go ahead and launch it in my browser. So we've got our really ugly HTML page right here. And we're going to begin styling this page and see if we can't make it look a little bit better as we learn about CSS. So here's our page. Here's our code, our HTML markup. And now we're going to add some inline styles. So inline styles, they are styles that are specific to a single HTML element. Now, when I say a single HTML element, I'm not saying a single type of HTML element. In other words, if we're going to style this H1 right here, if I add an inline style right here, it will only apply to H1s within this HTML document. It will not transfer to this about page. It is only this HTML document, and it is only this one H1 tag, meaning that if we have other H1s inside of our document, they will not pick up the styling. So instead of using this H1, let's go down here and use an H2 because we see inside of our document, we've actually got quite a few H2s. We've got one down here at the bottom with deploy previews. We've got in here with production deploys, and then we've got our getting started. So we're going to apply an inline style to this H2 so you can see how that style affects just this element and that element only. And how we do that is we use an attribute of the HTML tag called style. And inside of the style tag, we can add CSS properties to the style tag or the style attribute, and that will change the way our H1 looks in the page. So let's start off with something really simple, and let's change simply the color of the font that we are using to render that H2 in the page. And let's set color to something really outlandish that we'll be able to see really easy, and let's go with red. So as you can see right here, although we have multiple H2s in the page, so we've got this H2, we've got this H2, and this H2, the red only applied to this one H2 right here, and it is red and the others remain black. So what this means is that when we do inline styles in our pages, these styles have extreme specificity. In other words, they are very specific to the element on which that style tag or that style attribute has been activated, and where a style sheet property or a CSS property has been added to that style. Now let's talk about the syntax of CSS really quick, since we're diving into actually using attributes. And the way CSS works is it is a key value pair or a dictionary of properties and values that can be altered. And so what I mean by that is the color is the key, and this red, or the actual value, is the value that is paired with this key. So when CSS reads this style right here and begins to alter the look and feel of our page, it's going to see that this property right here is referring to the font color of the text within this H2 element. So what's going to happen is it's going to read the color, it's going to immediately look at the value and see that it's red, and then when it gets rendered in the browser, we're going to see that it is going to change that color from black, which all the rest of our H2s have, to the color red. So let's go look at that in our browser. Let's open up our developer tools. Let's go to elements, and then let's select that specific H2. And then let's look at this. We've got color and red, just like we have in our code. And then if we come over here into the styles, and these are the computed styles, or the styles once they've been created from all of the styles or style sheets and everything, and the page gets rendered, we get to see what actually happens. So this H2 right here, this style, is actually given to us by the browser. So the browser provides us this style, and that's where we see user agent. What we're talking about is the browser we're using, whether it be Chrome, Internet Explorer, Safari, Opera, what have you. So every browser has a default style sheet built into it that does give us these default styles. Because right here, until we added this red right here, we were seeing H1s and H2s were bold and their font was bigger than, I believe this one we had is an H4 or an H3, and it's definitely bigger than regular text, right, in our list items. So all browsers have a default style sheet that is pretty generic and just gives us some very basic look and feel. But over here, you can see this basic look and feel that they provide us, and then we can override the basic look and feel by providing our own styling like we did in our HTML. So we changed it to red. Let's go ahead and let's change something else. Let's change the background color. Let's go to background color and let's change it to black, and we'll just make this black and red. And let's see what happens. All right, very similar to what happened before. We can see we get our generic styles from the browser, and then we get our custom styles, which are from an element style and not from a different type of CSS, which we will learn about later. We'll learn about the other ways to add CSS to our documents in upcoming videos. Now let's talk about the syntax. So we'd begun talking about the syntax where we have these key value pairs, and then we've got another key value pair right here. We've got our background color as a key, and then we've got a value, we've got our key, we've got our value. They are both, the key and value are separated by a colon. That's how CSS knows that we're talking about a key and a value. And then to separate different key value pairs, we use the semicolon, just like we do in programming languages like Java, to show the end of a statement. So make sure that you are putting a semicolon between all key value pairs. If you forget this semicolon, it's going to assume you've got color, colon, and then it's going to try to make all of this the value for your CSS. Browsers are pretty smart nowadays, so when the CSS engine parses the styles, it'll probably fix that for you. But don't be a lazy programmer. Make sure you're always using the proper syntax when you are creating your CSS, when you're doing your key value pairs. So this video went over inline CSS, and that CSS, as we have demonstrated, is very specific to a single element within a single HTML document, and it doesn't matter that it's an H1 or an H2, and then we have other H2s. Inline styles are specific to a single element in a single HTML document. And you should be able to begin to see how inline styles affecting a very specific element inside of a very specific HTML page can become a problem as we begin to create more generic styles and style sheets that belong to a whole page, and then also those that belong to an entire website through external style sheets, which we'll be learning up here in a minute. So keep this in mind. If you're having styling bugs and you don't seem to be able to change the style of a particular element in a page, a high likelihood is somebody added an actual style attribute to that specific element, and you need to go get rid of that and use a more generic form of CSS to style that element, which we're going to be learning about next.